Yep, that's our protagonist Cazaril, and he's about to get wrapped up in one of the most mind-bending theological conspiracies you've never heard of. But before we dive into divine curses and royal politics at 300 miles per hour, let me tell you how this former noble-turned-galley slave-turned-tutor accidentally became the last hope for an entire kingdom. And folks, this isn't your typical fantasy story where the chosen one learns magic and saves the day with a fancy sword. This is a story about a man who's so done with everything that he'd rather apply for a job teaching poetry than deal with any more court intrigue. Spoiler alert. He fails spectacularly at avoiding court intrigue. Welcome to the Curse of Chalion, where theology meets political thriller in a world where gods are real, death doesn't always stick, and prayers should come with warning labels. This masterpiece by Lois McMaster Bujold takes everything you think you know about fantasy and turns it inside out faster than you can say divine intervention. Let's set the scene. The Chalion Ibra universe operates under the influence of 5 gods: the father of winter, the mother of summer, the son of autumn, the daughter of spring, and the bastard of all seasons. But unlike your typical fantasy deities who throw lightning bolts and demand sacrifices, these gods can only act in our world through willing human vessels. And boy, do they have a talent for finding the most reluctant vessels possible. Enter Lupe di Cazaril, our protagonist who starts the story by begging for a job as a kitchen scullion at a noble house where he once served as a page. Picture this: a former courtier and military commander reduced to rags, his back bearing the scars of rowing in enemy galleys, just wanting a quiet place to hide from his past. Instead, he gets appointed as secretary tutor to a royal princess, Isel, and her lady-in-waiting, Beatrice. This is like applying for a job at McDonald's and accidentally becoming the CEO's personal assistant. But here's where things get serious. The realm of Chalion is under a curse. Not just any curse, a generations-deep, divine-level curse that has been slowly destroying the royal family of Chalion for decades. And it turns out Cazaril might be the only person who can see it, thanks to a rather inconvenient case of death he experienced. Yes, you read that right. He died and came back. But we'll get to that part. The curse manifests in the most insidious ways. Every decision made by the men of the royal family turns to disaster. Every marriage ends in tragedy. Every attempt to break free from it only tightens its grip. It's like having the worst luck imaginable, but make it supernatural and multiply it by 1,000. As Cazaril guides his young charge, Isel, through the treacherous waters of court politics, he discovers that her half-brother Tedes and the current Royer of Chalion are both caught in the curse's web. The royal court is a snake pit of ambition, where every smile hides a dagger and every courtesy masks a threat. And at the center of it all is the ruthless Gironal family, who have been manipulating the curse to their advantage, using the royal family's misfortune to consolidate their own power. But what makes this story truly extraordinary is its exploration of faith, free will, and the nature of miracles. The gods in this world cannot act directly. They need human souls to open themselves willingly to divine intervention. It's like trying to help someone who has to explicitly ask for help, even if you can see they're about to walk off a cliff. The gods can see the future, but they're powerless to prevent disasters unless humans choose to become their instruments. Cazaril learns this the hard way when he becomes a saint, not the holy, peaceful kind, but the "oh God, why me" kind. He becomes a living vessel for divine magic, which sounds cool until you realize it's more like being a cosmic lightning rod. Every miracle comes with a price, and in Chalion, that price is often paid in death. The story builds to a crescendo as Cazaril realizes that to break the curse, someone must willingly sacrifice themselves to the gods. But with a twist, The sacrifice must be made for the right reasons, with the right intentions, at exactly the right moment. It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a horse in a thunderstorm, except the needle is magical and the horse is actually a metaphor for fate. The genius of the curse of Chalion lies in how it handles the intersection of the divine and the mundane. This isn't just a story about gods and curses, it's about human nature, about how we face impossible choices, about the quiet heroism of doing what's right, even when it costs us everything. Cazaril isn't a chosen one who was destined for greatness. He's a broken man who keeps trying to do the right thing, even when the universe seems determined to break him further. The theological system Bujold creates is fascinating in its complexity. The 5 gods represent different aspects of life and death, but they're not simply good or evil. They're more like forces of nature that operate on a level humans can barely comprehend. It's like trying to explain quantum physics to a medieval peasant, except the quantum physics can occasionally possess people and perform miracles. The novel's climax brings together all these threads: the political intrigue, the theological mysteries, and the personal journeys of its characters, in a way that feels both inevitable and surprising. The resolution of the curse requires not just sacrifice, but understanding. It's not enough to be willing to die for a cause. You have to understand why you're dying and what your death will mean. The Curse of Chalion stands as a masterpiece of fantasy literature not because it subverts tropes, but because it elevates them. It takes familiar elements, curses, gods, politics, and prophecy, and weaves them into something entirely new. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism aren't defeating the Dark Lord in single combat, but simply being willing to stand up and say yes when the universe asks you to do something impossible. And in the end, that's what makes this book special. It's not just about breaking a curse, it's about how faith, courage, and sacrifice can transform not just kingdoms, but souls. It's about how sometimes the most powerful magic isn't in grand gestures and epic battles, but in the quiet moments when we choose to do what's right, even when it costs us everything. So if you're looking for a fantasy novel that will make you think as much as it entertains, that will challenge your assumptions about faith and heroism while keeping you on the edge of your seat, The Curse of Chalion is your next must-read. Just remember, when the gods come calling, make sure you read the fine print. Death may be temporary, but paperwork is forever. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment down below